Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the ZIIGAAT NUO. This is a brand that I'd never heard of until the NUO came along. And I've actually got the NUO. I've actually got two of them. I got two of them just to, to see and to satisfy my my QC OCD that I have. And I also got the Chino as well. All right, I got them all through LINSOUL. And this is their entry level, let's put it that way, their entry level IEM. It's a single dynamic 10mm LCP, which is, LCP has become kind of like the go-to driver type to kind of make sure that you will have a good ratio between quality of the driver, quality of sound, good tuning. Obviously that's not the 100% correct, because you can have an amazing driver in terms of its quality, and if it's tuned badly it's going to sound like garbage. But anyway, kind of LCP has become that kind of driver type that most brands go for, when they want to offer a product which is going to be ticking the right boxes in the right places. Anyway, this is an IEM priced at under $20. It's there. It's obviously it's competing at that price range with a number of other $20 IEMs, or just above $20 IEMs, which are absolutely amazing. So obviously it's got its work cut out for it. Anyway, this is the box that it comes in. A very simple box, nothing special. Inside, IEMs came over there. Obviously, as you can see, cable. This is the cable still wound up. I've got one over there, obviously, and the tips. I'll be very honest. Neither the cable nor the tips are really any good, especially the tips. The cable, I can still live with it, although it doesn't exactly handle or behave itself in the most ideal of manners. It tangles up quite easily. Well, look, it's $20, so I guess you can't really complain. As for the IEMs themselves, that's a different story. It's a very nice shell with a nicely designed faceplate, which, simple but metal. So it's a nice shell, nice design. You can kind of almost see the driver inside. It's a smoked shell, but you can almost see the driver inside. They're not heavy. They fit very nicely, because this is, after all, a kind of a universal shape of the shell, so it's not going to really be any problem with regards to its fitment. And yeah, that's basically it. So it's well built. It's decently well built for the price. Looks the part, looks understated, but it looks the part. It looks nice. It looks a little bit more expensive than what it actually is. Honestly, it's just the tips, which are very soft, and I ended up using these green stemmed ones that I usually get from PENON, which I really enjoy very much, these tips, and they actually worked quite well here with the NUO. And the cable as well, it doesn't sound bad, the cable. It's just that it's got this kind of life to itself that you can kind of see. It's very tangly and so on. Anyway, this is the basic hardware side of things with regards to the NUO. So let's just now position it and kind of compare it ultimately to some of the other $20 IEMs out there. What have I selected? As I mentioned, the $20 price bracket has become highly competitive, and it ends up being very much the same thing that's been done before, with slight nuances here and there. Anyway, I've got here the CCA Polaris, the KZ-ZVX, MOONDROP Shoot 2, the CELEST Wyvern, the TANCHJIM One, the TINHIFI Elf CO, the 7Hz Zero, the red edition, the Ruby edition. I still haven't gotten the 02, the TANGZU Waner, the Jade Green, SIMGOT EW100P, sorry, and the TRUTHEARS Hola. So I've got a nice selection of IEMs here. Some of them you're also using LCP drivers. Some of them are using titanium, which is the case of the Elf. But this uses LCP, this uses LCP, that uses LCP. So LCP's kind of been a driver or driver type or diaphragm type that's been used by quite a few of the brands here. So what is the sound here of the NUO? Well, the NUO, you could say that the NUO kind of has it's not really a Harman tune because the way the pinna gain is done, and it picks at around 4K, and then, well, just past 4K to be honest, and then kind of dips slightly there. So it's not really a Harman, because Harman usually peaks a little bit higher. Although you could say that the bass is a Harman styled bass. Yes, you could say it's a Harman styled bass. Not that the mids and upper mids and treble really are not really Harmonish, but the bass, you can say it's a Harman. It's a Harman styled bass execution. And that means it's got nice weight. It's got a nice nice timbre, nice tonality associated with it. It's got good mid bass impact, decent extension, and then like I was saying, the mids and the upper mids, they are a mixed bag, because you will find instances where, for example, female vocals will come across very nicely, and then you have other instances where they are not exactly, I'm not going to say harsh or aggressive, but they're a little bit more unpolished. And I think that's the one thing that will differentiate the majority of these IEMs, is how polished some of them are compared to others, and then ultimately how much bass they also have compared to the others, which will then deem the overall tonality of the IEM a more warmer sounding or a more brighter sounding. So this one here has a kind of a more warmer sounding tonality, although, like I said, in certain instances and with certain genres, especially with female vocals, it can get a little bit, or it can get surprisingly hot. Let's put it that way. Of the ones which are the leaner bass ones here, the Elf is one of those, the 7 Hertz is another one, and then the EW100 also falls a little bit into that category of the leaner bass, not because it actually is lean, the bass, but because the upper mids and treble on here are quite energetic, and so ultimately what ends up having here is you have IEMs here which will be very good when it comes to the technical side of things. So we'll be technically very proficient with great technicalities, good soundstage, good imaging, which would then be a benefit. For example, if you're a gamer, you could use those IEMs which are good at soundstage and imaging for that. Great detailed resolution, but then they lack somehow a little bit in that fun musicality aspect. And other IEMs here are much more musical, maybe not as proficient technically, but it ultimately will depend on what it is your preference. For example, the Polaris is it's got, because of the way that it's been tuned with a little bit more of emphasis on the bass, and you just have to compare it to the ZIIGAAT to see what I mean. The ZIIGAAT sounds just a little bit more brighter, but that brightness can then lead to some lack of polish on occasions, while the Polaris always sounds very, very, very balanced, very polished. It might not be the ultimate detail monster, but it's very organic sounding, very engaging, very old school type of sound. The TRU 2, I don't have the TRU 1 here, but compared to the TRU 1, is in my opinion a massive upgrade, because now you have bass, and it's probably the bassiest IEM out of all here. Although that doesn't mean it's got the best bass. No, it doesn't have the best bass in my opinion. Probably the one the 2 IEMs here that probably have the best bass just on the bass department will probably be the Hola and the Wyvern. The TRU 2, as I was saying, it's a nice, fun, engaging sound. A little bit, like I was saying, the bass is a little bit on the slower side, but it's a nice, fun, engaging sound. Good for EDM, good for rap, good for more dynamic, with bass heavy or more bass prominent emphasis. Okay, the Wyvern kind of follows very much the same idea of sound as the Polaris and as the NUO to a certain extent, although it ends up being more polished than the NUO in the upper mids and treble, in my opinion. The Wyvern is very much an understated IEM. It's not only does it have a beautiful shell, this kind of milky white shell that looks like resin, is very nicely done. I mean, very, very nice. It fits beautifully. It's a really very smart looking IEM, and it sounds absolutely fantastic. Next to that one, the TANCHJIM One, which is one of my favorite IEMs. I just think it sounds absolutely amazing. It's probably one of the ones that's got the most mid-bass presence, but that mid-bass presence has been done so well that it gives us a very nice, satisfying, organic kind of sound, which is very musically engaging, very musically gratifying. Fair enough. In terms of overall technicalities, I would say that the does edge it out. But what it edges out, the one in terms of technicalities, it doesn't make up for it in terms of ultimate musicality. So the TANCHJIM One does edge it out in terms of ultimate musicality. But look, the reality is this: the differences are, yes, perceivable, but they're not huge or humongous, and they will be very much dependent on you or your ears and what you like listening to, because what I'm saying is valid for me and for what I like listening to. But there will be plenty of those, there will be plenty of guys out there that will listen to it and not necessarily agree with what I'm saying. All right. The Hola, again, an IM that came and went and got forgotten in the sea of countless IMs that are constantly being launched. It's got a bigger driver, an 11.5 millimeter, if I'm not mistaken, 11 millimeter driver. And although the bass, when you look at the curve, seems to be lower than some of the other IMs, or towards the more lower side, like the 0, the 7 hertz and so on, when you actually listen to it, it's got a very nice tonality. I mean, seriously, the Hola, it's like I said, it's one of those IMs that just falls on the forget side of things, and it's at times like this when I actually go and fetch some of the IMs that I have and I start comparing them, and I say to myself, wow, that's really good, and it's a pity people don't talk much about it. And it's a very nice IM. EW100P, in terms of its technical capabilities, is absolutely amazing. I think if that's your thing, if that's what rocks your boat, if you like technicalities, EW100 definitely. It can maybe for some be a little bit hot, but surprisingly, and I can't really explain it. It's one of those things that sometimes you just don't know why it happens this way. Although it's relatively brighter sounding than many of the other IMs here, somehow the balance that they've struck, and I think it has to do with the tonality and the timbre that they've been able to obtain here. It sounds very, very nice. It sounds very high fidelity. Okay, 1 year the Jade. Nice. I mean, there's really not much more I can say about it. The 1 year was really only in that 3, 4, 5K area that some people complained about it being maybe a little bit too intense. I have found that using the whiteboard tips, actually, if you noticed, I have used quite a lot of whiteboard tips in a lot of these IEMs. Like, for example, on the Polaris, the whiteboard tips really help out with improving slightly its technicalities. And the same thing here with the 1 year. The 1 year with the whiteboard tips, it opens up the sound in a manner where that perceived maybe a harshness or intensity and that part of the spectrum kind of goes away, and it ends up giving us that more warmer, more old school kind of tonality. Zero, I mean, technically again very proficient, very proficient. It's like I said, I pity I don't have here the 0 too, but compared to the ones that I do have here, the 0 is very technically capable, but it lacks that mid-bass impact to give music that engagement. And I mean, when you compare these two, which ultimately have very similar curves, actually, you straight away see what I mean. While on here you will get the necessary engagement for several songs to sound like they should be sounding, or like the way I like sounding. Like, for example, It's On from George Duke, let me see, It's On from George Duke, Sunrise from Larry Carlton, Up and Up from Jeff Ryan, From Dusk to Dawn from George Duke. Here it sounds fantastic. Over here it just sounds thin. It sounds excessively, not excessive, it just sounds a little bit lifeless. Let's put it that way. I don't want to be as well too mean, because that I wouldn't be fair if I was saying it, like that. As for the Elf is again an IM that surprised me in the sense that although the bass curve doesn't look like it's going to have a lot of bass, and it's actually the leanest graphically in terms of the bass compared to the rest, it actually sounds quite nice. And the main thing here that you gotta try and do on the Elf and on the TANCHJIM Zero, because of the way that they are this bullet style shape, you have to make sure that you get a good fit. If you get a good fit on the Elf, you will be very impressed. And I would even say that the Elf, although it kind of has a sound which tends more towards the Zero sound, if you are able to fit it properly and nice and deep, you will get a sound that, in terms of the bass, is more satisfying than the Zero. The balance that is obtained in terms of the bass, the mids, the treble, is more satisfying and gives certain songs, like I said, that fun factor which sometimes misses here on the Zero. The NUO, it's like I said, it doesn't really bring anything to the table which is novel compared to any of these IMs. Technically, it's not the most proficient one, okay, but it's not bad either. In terms of its musicality, yes, it's satisfying, it's engaging, but you know, the NUO, in my opinion, just hasn't done enough to kind of be a standout. All right, and if you own a lot of these IEMs here, especially the warmer sounding ones, this will definitely not be an upgrade or even a side grade. It will just be, okay, another IEM that sounds basically the same. If, for example, you do have a health, or if you have a zero, then yes, then you could argue that this is something that would be interesting to have as an alternative if you don't want to go for any one of the other ones. But the truth is, you know, when you take the NUO and you compare it to the 1 year, the 1 year does everything the NUO does and does a little bit more. You know, the same thing applies if I compare it to the 1 year, to the Wyvern, same situation. The same thing with the Hola. And I'm mentioning the Wyvern, I'm mentioning the Hola, and I'm mentioning the 1 year because these are warmer sounding with a tonality more along the lines of this. Compared to the Oxygen, my God, sorry, my apologies. Compared to the one, the one is just better in terms of its tonality and timbre and the way that it presents its mids and upper mids. So it's more, for me at least, more correct sounding. The problem is the fit. That's the issue there. While here you're guaranteed to have a fit which won't bother you, you know, almost guaranteed. There the fit is a hit and miss like on the Elf. And then compared here to the KZs, I'll be honest with you. Compared to the Polaris, I prefer the Polaris. I think the Polaris also has a kind of a tuning which is very similar, but the Polaris somehow strikes a nicer balance. And with these wide bores, especially these BGVP wide bores, technically it is able to go and fetch a little bit extra that it might lack with a more narrow bore tip. And it just sounds very satisfying in terms of timbre and tonalities. It's a very nice sounding IM, the Polaris. Compared to the ZVX. The ZVX got a little extra more detail up top. I could have had the DFI here, especially the non-switch one, because it will also be more or less at the same price. But you know, the DFI, the non-switch one, or the ZVX, they're kind of the same thing. The problem with the ZVX and the DFI to a certain extent is when you push the volume, it gets it becomes unpolished. You notice that it loses a little bit its polishness, something which on, for example, the Polaris, it doesn't happen. So ultimately, I think the Polaris would be the best of those three if that's something that you want for it to maintain its composure, let's put it that way. Although it's not a radical thing or something which is, you know, a deal breaker. And that's it, guys. I mean, like I said, NUO, it's a nicely built IM. Accessories could be a little bit better, but again, we're talking $20. And honestly, you know, it just doesn't bring anything to the table which is novel. That's, I think, the biggest issue here. It sounds decent, it sounds okay, but if you have some of these IEMs, this doesn't make sense. It's just, you know, rather save up and get something better, something that will be an upgrade, because this will definitely not be an upgrade compared to some of the IEMs that are here. All right. Anyway, guys, I'll show you now the graphs and we'll wrap it up. Hi guys, and welcome now to the graph section for the ZIIGAAT NUO. This is the graph of the NUO. I mean, on its own, it doesn't seem to have anything which is kind of going to be a problem or offensive in any manner. I mean, it's got nice bass, decent mid bass, good transition into the mids, no real bleed, kind of a harmony style on the bass section, not so much on the mids and highs. The peak there is around 4.5 of the pin gain, and then this dip right after the peak. And it's this area here it's kind of a hit or miss with some vocals. Like I said, this area here just sounds a little bit just overly you know, harsh or intense is maybe not the ideal words, but it just sounds too much on occasions. And there's a certain amount of lack of polish, especially when you start pushing the volume. And to that extent, that's one thing that I actually didn't mention when I was talking earlier, is I would recommend with the majority of these IEMs, unless you are a person that really appreciates or is a freak for technicalities, use a warmer sounding dongle or something of the sort. And the reality is the Yuki or the Colorfly, the M1P, actually was able to make the majority of them, which can sometimes be a little bit more aggressive, make them sound way more toned down and more pleasant to listen to, including the NUO. Anyway, this is the NUO. Let's start comparing it here now with some IEMs. This is the NUO compared with the 1 year, the Jade edition. Same sort of bass. Like I said, the 1 year was a little bit criticized about the fact that the spin again peak here was a little bit overly intense. I honestly can't really say that I found it to be intense, to be totally transparent, especially when using the wider bore tips. I actually find that the 1 year sounds nicer because it kind of makes this whole area here between 2 and 7K sound very uniform, very harmonious, as you can see. I just enjoyed it very much, and then technically nice big sound stage, good imaging, it's better than the NUO, better than the NUO. And it's the balance that they've actually struck between the bass and the mids and the highs that I just feel that it conveys the 1 year a nicer, more agreeable tonality. Okay, so that's that. The next one I'm going to show you is the MOONDROP Shoe. On paper, it seems like it's got about the same bass as the NUO, but no, it actually does have more bass than the NUO. It's probably one of the bassiest ones here overall in terms of sounding. And then it's a nice, it's just got a nice pleasant sound. There's really no criticism that I can make here. The peak of the pin again is at 3K, and it starts dropping off, so nothing offensive here. Good air past. It's just a nice, very nice sounding IM. Which, for example, when just for you to understand the difference, I'm not going to show you the Shoe. I'm going to show you the Zero, which basically the Shoe and the Zero had identical graphs, but it will be enough for you guys to understand what I'm saying. So this is the one that I'm showing you now. This is the Zero, okay, and the Shoe was the same thing. And the Zero, the problem with the Zero is that it lacks this mid-bass energy here. It's not the the upper part here that's done wrong. No, this part here is very good. It's very technically proficient. Actually, the fact that it doesn't have much bass actually allows this area to shine, and it's got great technicalities. And the Shoe too is kind of along those lines. Obviously, because they've added this bass, they've given it a more fun, more engaging reproduction of music, but they've the penalty is that it loses out in its technicalities slightly. Still the truth is this: if I was to choose between the True 2 and the Zero, I would choose the True 2 because it's just more satisfying. All right, so let's put again the ZIIGAAT here because that's what we want to know. Okay, since I've got already let me just make the ZIIGAAT in black so we can contrast here with the Zero. The ZIIGAAT compared to the Zero, technically it's not as capable. Yes, it does have more mid-bass impact, so yes, it will be more pleasant, more musically engaging, more satisfying in that aspect. It just it's just quite interesting how the Zero, although not very bass strong, it never really loses its composure, and even at higher volumes it still manages to sound very balanced out, very coherent. There's no real areas here which start scaling more than others, which is something that on the NUO it happens to a certain degree, especially in that upper mids like I was mentioning. Okay, so let's just recap again. So I've shown you the 1 year, I've shown you the True. This next one here is this is the EW100. The EW100 in terms of the bass, very similar to the bass of the NUO, just a little bit cleaner in my opinion, and that's also down to the fact that the mids and upper mids and treble are done in that more energetic fashion. And this is again another example of, as you can see, the overall energy here, especially in that 3, 4, 5K area, is very much similar to the NUO, but somehow it doesn't sound as aggressive, as hard as it does, or as it can sound when you start pushing the volume. It maintains its scales very well, maintains its composure very well, and then technically the EW100P is very, very good. Okay, so that's that. Number 16, this is the TANCHJIM One, an IM which does have certain similarities in the way that it's been tuned, but it's got just that little extra more mid bass, which just balances it out very nicely with the upper mids and the treble, and it just sounds very, very good. The one sounds very, very nice. It's a very satisfying IM to listen to. It sounds very hi-fi-ish. Okay, number 17 is the ZVX. Bass, it seems like it's got less, but no, not really. It actually has about the same bass, if maybe just not a little bit more of impact. Okay, and then the upper mids and treble for me are nicer. The only thing is again that they lose a little bit of their composure. They become a little bit rough at higher volumes. Okay. Number 19 is the, well, I've shown you already, but it's the 7 hertz, the 0. Okay, 20 is the TRUTHEARS Hola, and let me actually change this to a different color, make it red so you can show. The Hola again has got a kind of a similar-ish kind of graph. As you can see, it also peaks at around 4K, but because that energy level here compared to the bass, and the bass, don't forget, it's a bigger driver, it just sounds very, very musically correct. The Hola, very musically correct, and still capable in technically better sound stage and better imaging for sure. So that's the Hola. Number 21 is the CELEST Wyvern. Again, another IM that, although it seems like the bass is significantly lower, no, it isn't. The overall tonality that they've struck is it's a very agreeable tonality. It sounds very nice. It's got a nice warm sound to it, and I prefer the Wyvern, to be honest. I really do. It scales better as well than the NUO. All right. The next one is the TINHIFI, the Elf. Again, it's not really this upper part here which is a problem. It's the bass where, yes, you do notice there's a bit of a difference in terms of the bass, but this difference can be counteracted if you actually insert the Elf deep. If you're able to get a good deep insertion, the Elf will sound very, very nice. It will give it that bass weight that it needs. The problem is it's a bullet style IM, so that cannot, sometimes it's not the ideal, let's put it that way. Okay, and now finally the Polaris in the wide bore configuration, which is this one. The Polaris, as you can see, very similar curve to the NUO, very similar, but I feel that the Polaris just sounds again nicer in terms of the bass. It's got a better quality bass, in my opinion, at least. Maybe because of the balance that they've struck with the mids, it's better obtained. It just sounds like it's got a better quality bass. And then the tuning of the mids and upper mids, similarly, just that it peaks at 3 and then drops. So more harmonish kind of than the NUO. And ultimately, again, it's another IM that I would prefer it over the NUO in terms of its overall sound. The Wyvern, as you can see, also shares the same sort of bass of mids, upper mids, and treble execution as the Polaris, and the bass, although it looks like it's less, no, they basically sound very similar in terms of the bass as well. The Wyvern definitely and the Polaris definitely are IMs which just have got that same style of tuning, very, very approximate to the style of tuning of the NUO, but they just do it better than the NUO. Okay. Anyway, guys, like I said, the NUO it's a decent enough IM. It just doesn't bring anything novel to the table. Honestly, it doesn't do anything which makes it stand out, and it ends up being an average IM, at least in the company of the IMs that I selected here. And something that you have to consider carefully. I mean, have a listen to it if you can prior to perhaps considering purchasing. But trust me, if you do have any of the IMs that I mentioned, purchasing this has to be done with a certain amount of care, so that you don't just go spend money on another IM that's just going to be the same thing. All right. Anyway, guys, as always, like and subscribe. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. Okay. You take care now. Bye bye.